Born in the dirt and raised on noise, his left hook was destined for more than the gravel roads and rusted trucks of his hometown. It was the kind of punch made for movies. A blonde hammer with Hollywood shine. They said he was John Wayne's kin, and maybe he was. He played the hero, part fist, part grin. HBO one week, Stallone's sidekick the next. They started writing his legend before the ink was dry. But boxing doesn't write fairy tales. Not for long. His story burned, page by page, fast and without mercy. Tommy Morrison was born on January 2, 1969 in Gravette, Arkansas, the son of Tim and Diana Morrison, a pair whose relationship was combustible from the start. By the time Tommy could walk, he was learning how to duck, not in the ring, but in a household where objects flew during fights and the air was thick with volatility. He'd come in and she'd be mad and throw a coffee cup at him, Morrison once said. But what do? You just sit there and you watch it. I had to watch that for a lot of years. I became very withdrawn. I became independent. I started doing things on my own. That independence came early. Suspended from preschool at age 4 for locking girls in a bathroom. Dropped out of school for a time after 8th grade. Before he could shave, he was entering Toughman contests under fake names, beating grown men for cash in smoke-filled bar arenas. His mother doctored his ID so he could fight. Tommy did the rest, knocking out drunks, bikers, pot-bellied tough guys twice his age. In one contest, he flattened a bearded 26-year-old in the finals, pocketed $300, and celebrated the only way a 13-year-old outlaw could, by renting a go-kart. His upbringing was equal parts boxing lineage and bare-knuckle survival. His father, Tim, worked construction and took jobs where he could. A job at Skelly Oil provided some stability until an accident left him legally blind by the late 1980s. Still, Tim had boxed in the Kansas City Golden Gloves, as had Tommy's uncles and older brother. Diana, Tommy's mother, had dreams of being a fighter herself. Trained by her adopted father, she became an amateur boxing judge and tattooed a pair of gloves on young Tommy's left shoulder. But her story wasn't built for nostalgia. She once stabbed one of Tim's girlfriends to death in a barroom brawl, but was later acquitted. By the time Morrison was 9, his parents had separated for good. He settled with his mother in Jay, Oklahoma, a small town that could barely contain the fuse already lit inside him. Diana described her son as bright but sneaky, and the fire inside him as less ambition than retaliation. Many believed that the vengeful streak that fueled his rise in the ring wasn't about glory. It was about getting even with the life he'd come from. Before the lights, before the left hook that became legend, Tommy Morrison was just Tom, a restless kid in small-town Oklahoma, roaming from street to street with a chip on his shoulder and fists always half-clenched. He fought boredom by chasing fights, drifting from town to town with his buddies, looking for trouble. Stolen car stereos turned into beer money. Scars turned into stories. His parents had converted a wooden shed into a makeshift boxing gym, calling it the Wolf Creek Boxing Club. Inside its splintered walls, Tom the Bomb, as they called him then, began sharpening his fists. The nickname the Duke wasn't his at first. It belonged to his older brother, Tim. Tommy drifted from boxing and into football. At Jay High School, he played linebacker and tight end, a two-way bruiser with speed, size, and just enough recklessness to scare coaches. He once poured gasoline on the field and lit it aflame after being cut from the team. That was Tommy, one local said. Always the fuse looking for a match.
I never was thought of as a bully. I was always, liked by everybody. And I like to be liked by everybody. I'm willing to get along with anybody that wants to get along with me.
High school sports caused multiple surgeries. 2 on his right knee, 1 on his left. But he was still good enough to earn a scholarship to Emporia State. I figured that was it, Morrison said. No more fighting for me. His classmates weren't so sure. They voted him least likely to survive. But his mother had one more fight in mind. She wanted him to enter the Kansas City Golden Gloves, a tournament with family legacy. Morrison's brother and 2 uncles had all won it. Morrison entered, and he won, easily. Never did make it to Emporia State, Morrison said. The day I was supposed to report for spring practice, I went to Kansas City to begin training for the Olympic trials. That Golden Glove title caught the eye of John Brown, a grizzled amateur trainer who had seen more prospects than he could remember Brown wasn't impressed at first, but a friend pushed him to take a closer look. What he saw was raw power and little else. Morrison had been trained by his father, a man now half blind, and had never learned the rhythm of the gym, the discipline of the bell, the science behind the storm. Brown started from scratch. Footwork, defense, balance, patience. He taught Morrison to fight with rhythm, not just rage. Morrison responded. He advanced through the semifinals of the National Golden Gloves, then made his way to the Olympic trials, where he lost in the quarterfinals to a name he'd hear again, Ray Mercer. But by then, people were no longer asking if Tom the Bomb could fight. They were wondering how far he could go. By the winter of 1988, Morrison left his rural hometown for Kansas City, moving in with an aunt and uncle. John Brown, his manager, also ran Ringside Products, a warehouse operation that shipped gear to boxing gyms around the country. Brown teamed up with Peyton Shear, a Kansas City promoter with ties to Madison Square Garden. They didn't start small. Morrison made his professional debut at the Felt Forum under the bright lights of the Garden's side stage. The fight was over quickly, a knockout. But the partnership between Brown and Shear unraveled just as fast. Brown, undeterred and lacking Shear's connections, tried steering Morrison's career on his own. He booked a fight in Montana, hardly a hotbed of prize fighting, where Morrison flattened Mike Foley, a Seattle firefighter flown in on the day of the fight. Foley was dispatched in just 21 seconds. Realizing he needed more connections in his corner, Brown enlisted Bill Caton, the former co-manager of Mike Tyson. Caton brought structure, vision, and a familiar blueprint. Keep the kid active, build the mystique with knockouts, and do it often. Morrison's calendar began to fill at a Tyson-like pace, twice a month if necessary, laying waste to journeymen and has-beens with explosive power and a rising reputation. To complete the Tyson echo, Kevin Rooney, Tyson's former trainer and a disciple of Cus D'Amato, was brought in to sharpen Morrison's raw tools. But the pairing fizzled. Rooney's authoritarian approach clashed with Brown's style. Enter Tommy Vergetz, who offered a calmer, more adaptable presence in the corner. By the fall of 1989, Morrison wasn't just another up-and-coming heavyweight. He was a walking headline. People magazine had already begun prepping a feature, intrigued as much by the fists as the family tree. Morrison claimed to be the great-grandnephew of Hollywood legend John Wayne, born Marion Morrison, a detail tailor-made for the American appetite for myth. Manager Bill Caton doubled down, insisting Tommy was Wayne's second grand cousin, but the Duke's real-life son, Patrick Wayne, wasn't so sure. The family hasn't heard of any relationship to him, Wayne said. But if he wins the heavyweight championship, we'll claim him.
This extraordinary natural ability, he has a natural left hook. A coordinated left hook is something that really cannot be taught. At least the propensity to do it is something you have to be born with. Tommy has it. Some great fighters became great. I'm not making any comparison between Tommy and the fighters I'm going to name, but two great fighters, two great heavyweights, legendary heavyweights, really had just basically a great left hook. Never anything very much more. That's Jack Dempsey and Joe Frazier. They became great world champions on the basis of having extraordinary, strong left hooks.
The legend only grew. Hollywood came calling, and Morrison answered. He landed a co-starring role opposite Sylvester Stallone in Rocky V, playing Tommy Gunn, the hungry, hot-headed protege to Stallone's iconic Rocky Balboa.
I can't let you go without asking you about your movie career. You're going to be in Rocky V. You have really an extensive role which you did a screen test for. Does that make you more nervous than boxing?
I think, as I said before, acting and boxing are two separate things. We try to we like to keep them separated. When I'm in the ring, it's strictly boxing. When I'm out of the ring, it's other things. But it's a great opportunity, and I hope that that too is a success for us all.
All right, well, no Rocky movie has not been a success so far, so the movie should work. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tommy, Caton said, is on the verge of superstardom. Morrison took a 6-month hiatus from boxing to film the movie, then promptly broke his hand in his return against journeyman Charles Woolard. After his hand healed, he returned with fire in his gloves, stopping 2 seasoned names in spectacular fashion. James Quick Tillis, a veteran of nearly 60 fights, and former heavyweight champion Pinklon Thomas, both stopped in the first round. Critics called Thomas washed up. Trainer Tommy Vergetz didn't care. Tommy was brilliant against Pinklon Thomas, Vergetz said. He never got credit because people decided Thomas was finished. It wouldn't have mattered if Thomas was 20. Tommy was a machine that night. With a Hollywood film in the can, a highlight reel of first-round knockouts, and glossy media buzz building around his all-American looks and devastating left hook, Morrison was on the cusp of something enormous. He had arrived, but fame is a fight of its own. The bright lights came with shadows, especially the women. They handed him phone numbers on scraps of paper, lipstick on napkins, room keys slid across bar tops. The nights got longer, and just when Morrison seemed to have it all lined up, he nearly let it all slip away against an unknown from the former Soviet Union, Yuri Vaulin.
The crowd reacts to Morrison's aggressiveness. And Morrison doing some damage with both hands. And the final seconds of this first round of the heavyweight fight. Tommy Morrison and Yuri Vaulin from Latvia.
They might have been putting the
Left from Morrison.
putting the cart ahead of the horse.
Little blood around the mouth of Morrison.
Well, Tommy Gallagher telling Vaulin to move, and the one time he didn't, he got caught with a left hook to the head. In fact, he doubled over in pain and fell to the canvas during sparring when he hit his sparring partner, Jerry Jones. Oh,
And Vaulin landing. He staggered Morrison.
Boy,
Morrison has never been down in his career, and he wobbled there.
He's got to stick to his game plan here, Vaulin. He shouldn't get, oh, he's in, but he's holding on. He should stay to the outside. He's landing from the outside. Why quit there?
And he lands again with a left. Vaulin putting on a show in the third round.
Putting on a show and catapulting himself to the top of the heavyweight division. If he takes out Morrison, he's rated in the top 10 in all three categories here.
And Morrison landed a left in the fourth.
Oh, dynamite.
Vaulin with another fine combination.
I'll tell you what, Tommy Morrison is really unsteady on his feet. His ankles are turning.
And now Morrison on the attack. Morrison missing wildly on that one, but for the first time, he stunned Vaulin.
Well, just like I said, he was still dangerous, and he's got him rocked. Let me tell you, and Gallagher was worried about that. Dynamite uppercut.
And the crowd clearly on Morrison's side, as you can tell. It was Vaulin's fight through the first four, and Morrison still tied with a big left hand. And Vaulin's hurt.
Body shot. That's it. They may stop the fight here. Doesn't look like he can continue. He looks like that shot took everything out of him.
7, 8, okay?
Gallagher telling him not to quit, and he doesn't. But he sure looked on the verge of it.
Break, step.
Oh,
And Vaulin hurt again.
turned his back. That's got to be it. A fighter turns his back. I can't believe that Smoger is actually letting him get away with this.
4.
That's it.
That's it. Tommy Morrison, who was in trouble and rocked in the fourth round but did not go down, ends it in the fifth.
Well, he finally decided his corner had to have told him to go back downstairs or finally go downstairs because he didn't do it in the first 4 rounds. And that's what turned the tide for him.
By late 1991, Morrison's name was being mentioned alongside the one that still sent shivers through the heavyweight division, Mike Tyson. A Morrison-Tyson showdown, co-manager Bill Caton predicted, could shatter box office records. But not everyone was sold. Critics called Morrison a one-trick pony, a left-hook specialist with a padded record. The knockouts were real, but the opposition wasn't. The whispers grew louder. Could Morrison take it as well as he gave? What would happen if someone pushed back? Outside the ring, the image took more hits. Morrison, blessed with matinee idol looks and a taste for the ladies, was living fast and recklessly. The parties turned to tabloid fodder. His name crept into the police blotter. A DUI arrest only deepened the doubts. Was he a rising star, or just another flameout in the making? That cloud followed him into the ring when he faced his toughest test, merciless Ray Mercer. It was the kind of matchup fans dream of. Two undefeated sluggers, both powerful, both flawed, both searching for validation. Someone was about to get a wake-up call, and in the heavyweight division, it never comes gently.
Well, Tony Perez shouldn't let, and I doubt...
Morrison, and he followed up with the left.
And he buzzed Mercer with that, because Mercer's holding on to the back of his neck.
Morrison going after. Okay. And Morrison landing again, and then a glancing, looping right hand.
3 real quick punches landed by Morrison. Well, Mercer's really using some dirty tactics in there. He's using a forearm across the face.
Uppercut for Morrison. Crowd responding to that. Well, that's been the big punch, the uppercut of Ray Mercer. Oh, another left hand.
Mercer jumped in from the outside with a right uppercut, and Morrison just countered with a quick left hook.
He shot the uppercut for Morrison. He continues to dominate.
Boy, Morrison is so accurate.
More
with
blood
his
on the
punches.
lower lip, Joe. A body punch with the left. Morrison, the uppercut. Tommy Morrison all over Ray Mercer. Morrison delivering.
Mercer talking to him in the corner.
Oh, that was the best punch Mercer's thrown. Chopping right hand as the third round comes to a close. Oh, good left hand for Mercer and the right. And Mercer has Morrison wobbled. And Mercer hanging on with the left hand. The left hand from Mercer.
Same punch he caught him with in the round before. Mercer jumped in with the left right uppercut and got countered with a great left hook by Tommy Morrison. But Mercer is really coming on in this round, evening things up a little.
The right from Mercer. Tony Perez separates them inside of 30 seconds remaining in this fourth round. And Mercer showing bounce in his legs.
Oh, that's...
Final seconds of the fourth round. Mercer has been holding.
Morrison covering up after that.
You heard Tommy Vorgans tell Tommy Morrison that he was getting away from the game plan to start working the body more.
All right, he wants him to go back, but he wants him to relax too. Like I said, he looked real anxious and uptight at the beginning of this fight, and that'll wear you out in itself, just that nervousness.
Mercer with two good right hands. And now Mercer on Morrison in the corner. And Mercer's all over him, and Morrison in trouble. And Morrison goes down for the first time in his career. And that is it.
That's it. The fight is over.
Ray Mercer has won it. He successfully defended his WBO heavyweight championship. Woo.
Boy, what a flurry of punches Ray Mercer put together there. Tommy Morrison does not know what town he's in.
Morrison didn't show up to the post-fight press conference. No explanations, no excuses, no defiance, just silence, and the bruises of a hard lesson learned. 4 months after being battered and broken by Mercer, Morrison climbed back into the ring. The message was clear. He wasn't going to disappear like Jerry Cooney, the once promising heavyweight who vanished from the sport for years after his first loss. Morrison didn't want sympathy. He wanted another shot. He was back in the gym 2 months after the Mercer beating, and back under the lights 2 months after that. The mission was simple: rebuild, brick by brick, fight by fight, opponent by opponent. Each bout wasn't just about padding a record. It was about learning, about sharpening, about proving to critics and to himself that the Mercer loss was a detour, not a dead end. The comeback trail began with 4 straight knockouts, But the camp insisted he wasn't just swinging for headlines anymore. He was thinking more, jabbing more, fighting smarter. Then came Joe the Boss Hip, a rugged southpaw from Washington with a heart that didn't understand retreat. Morrison was listed as a 10-1 favorite, and the matchup looked like another controlled burn on paper. Another exercise, another step. But Hip didn't come to play the role of stepping stone. He came with scars of his own and something to prove. What was supposed to be a lesson for Morrison turned into something else entirely. A war.
And Joe swelling, especially in the right eye, which is real dangerous because that's...
A spectacular combination by Morrison, a pair of jabs and then a right. And for some reason, Joe Hip is carrying his gloves low and is just, as Alex said, making himself available.
We talked to Joe about, Joe, how are you going to avoid Morrison's power? He says, I got to block it. I got to keep my right hand up to avoid the left. He just hasn't done it. Joe Hip just kind of fell into a right to the body there. He came inside with a scoring left hand and got out of the way of Tommy Morrison's punch coming back, which he hasn't done much of.
There's Tommy Burgetts in the corner, who is the trainer of Tommy Morrison, co-trainer along with John Brown
and a conditioning expert.
Yes.
Somebody who's worked very hard to get Tommy in condition, mentally and physically. And obviously after a loss like the Mercer loss, the mental part is perhaps even more. Tommy really has not gone back to that.
Well, swelling and bleeding is nothing new to Joe Hip. He does it with regularity. So maybe we're more concerned about it than is he.
Yeah, but the time Joe had a shot at a big fight against Burt Cooper, that was really decisive. He was in the fight, but his eyes just closed shut, so shut that they had to stop the fight in a TKO in the 5th round.
We want to remind our local ABC stations that at the end of this round, we're going to take a station break. That, by the way, the Burt Cooper fight, the same night that Tommy Morrison was knocked out by Ray Mercer.
Good thumping body punch by Joe Hip there. See Joe trying to counter.
A sweeping
backing
move
up, giving ground.
You know, that move by Morrison.
Important in the cut was how vulnerable he looked to a guy in Joe Hip who really, as big as he is not a power puncher, Dan. He's really kind of an arm puncher.
Oh, great uppercut by Morrison.
And the first one we've seen.
Oh, and a right to the chin puts Joe Hip down. Hip is up, beats the count. Draculich asking him if he can go on. That was a good, solid right uppercut, and then a right to the chin by Morrison.
From a man who's supposed to be
a right hand by Hip, Alex.
From somebody who's supposed to be a left hooker. He's using his right hand better than we've seen.
We're in the 5th round, a little over 2 minutes.
And you notice Joe Hip is not holding on. And he really hasn't gone in the survival mode. I mean, he kind of looks like busted up in the mouth.
Yep, Hip bleeding from the mouth. Oh, and Tommy Morrison, a double right hand. And Joe Hip better protect himself.
Now we'll see if Tommy Morrison can finish him. If he's got enough left. He looked tired in the 4th. Another half hook, half uppercut with the right hand by Tommy Morrison.
And Hip better put himself, Alex, in more of a defensive mode. As you say, either by hanging on. And Tommy Morrison, a double right hand. You see Hip look over at Draculich, and I don't know why.
I think he might, in the early rounds, he has not, at this stage, been able to carry here into round 6. But Joe Hip knows, and we should know, that it can come back in a flash at any moment.
Joe Hip has been the aggressor here in the 6th. He has apparently stemmed that flow of blood from his mouth. There's a good right hand by Morrison, but while it scored, it didn't look to do much damage. Facially, Joe Hip really doesn't look much the worse for wear, Alex, than he did, say, after the 3rd round, although there is some noticeable swelling in that right eyelid. Here we come to the end of round number 6. More for comfort than anything else.
Again, Hip coming forward. Morrison not throwing many meaningful punches. One right hand at the opening bell that really was hard, but look there. I mean, that's just, he's not planning himself. He's bouncing and trying to punch at the same time. Good right hand there.
A good right hand counter by Morrison. And Joe Hip, his right eye is definitely starting to swell to the point where I'm not sure if it's impairing his vision. It's safe to say it's not helping his vision any. And of course, that's from whence the left jab comes, that jab of Morrison's that he scored easily with and often with early in the fight. And you can see that Morrison just reacting to hip throwing the right by coming right back with the left.
Oh, good, solid.
Good right hand to the ribs.
Oh!
And there was a good scoring combination by Joe Hip.
And a good elbow to the throat by Joe Hip.
He was a football player.
Forearm shiver. Oh, you saw there how awkward and really unpolished a fighter Joe is. I mean, as he just kind of plodded in and missed the right hand. Missed that. But the fact of the matter is, Joe Hip right now is a fresher fighter, and that really is the story of the fight.
Joe was born, grew up in Yakima, Washington, lives now outside Seattle, and he is on the verge of possibly doing something that not many people gave him credit or has to be concerned. In the corner of Tommy Morrison, there's John Brown, his co-manager and trainer, and yes, that is a concerned look. And you see Joe Hip scored with an uppercut, and Morrison came back with a left. But this crowd here in Reno has definitely swung over Joe Hip in favor of Hip, and again, Alex, he scores.
They're jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah. Well, on our scorecards, Alex, if one of these fighters wins the night, 4 minutes of boxing left. This is the final minute of the ninth.
Wide open the mouth of Tommy Morrison, absolutely exhausted. Nothing but that jab. I mean, you know, he is got a little bit of snap in the jab, but that's just not enough to keep Joe Hip off him. And now Morrison's cutting the mouth.
Blood from the mouth of Morrison.
From that mouth that's been wide open for so long,
and
he's all busted up.
And that's how it gets cut. You can't fight with your mouth open. Oh, a good right hand by Morrison, and that hurts Joe Hip. Joe Hip is in trouble. Joe Hip is down. A right hand from Tommy Morrison staggers Joe Hip. He's up at 8, and that's the end of the fight. Vic Draculin stops the fight. And Tommy Morrison summons the power today, and it saves him in the 9th round. Joe Hip got up right at the count of 10, and Vic Draculin did not even determine whether or not he thought he could go on. He didn't beat the count, and the fight was stopped.
Morrison didn't leave the ring unscathed. He broke his hand again, and in the second round, Hip broke his jaw with a straight left. Each time I got hit on the jaw, I felt it separate more, Morrison said. This is what boxing is all about. He was forced to stay out of the ring for nearly 6 months, waiting for the injuries to heal. When he returned, it was with caution. A tune-up fight eased him back in, but a step-up came quickly. Carl the Truth Williams, a former title challenger whose best years were behind him, but whose jab still snapped with force, and whose nickname wasn't entirely ironic. On paper, Williams looked tailor-made for Morrison, a veteran with a suspect chin and a long history of being vulnerable to left hooks, the kind Morrison threw like wrecking balls. It looked like a gimme, an early knockout, another chance for Tommy to roll back into the title picture. But if boxing teaches anything, it's that fights rarely follow the script.
Referee Mills Lane, a no-nonsense referee will not allow hitting on the break, and a left drops Williams here in the first round. That left hook coming out of nowhere to connect to the head of Carl Williams. This is what Tommy Morrison would want, to come in and get a knockout in the first round against this seasoned veteran. He's not put his gloves behind the head of Tommy Morrison. Morrison connecting again as the crowd would love to see a first round knockout. We're under 1 minute now of the first round of this heavyweight bout between Tommy Morrison and Carl Williams. Williams in the white with red trim, Tommy Morrison in black with red, white, and blue. Former heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali, many times. There is a vicious left that connects to Williams as he tries to smile. If he's not careful, he'll be smiling from the canvas, looking up at Tommy Morrison, whose left hook has been very costly to Williams this evening. do notice Carl Williams' right hand. So Williams has the vigor of a younger fighter. It will remain to be seen if that continues with him into the later rounds. Still dancing off his toes. Tommy Morrison is not necessarily fatigued as he delivers a left hook and sends Williams to the canvas for a second time. Carl Williams having something of a dazed expression on his face, justifiably so. Tommy Morrison closes in for more action with a right uppercut that misses as Williams continues to hold Tommy Morrison behind his head. A vicious right hand, two right hands to the head of Carl Williams as Williams seems to be in trouble. We'll see if Morrison is able to do anything about it. Traditionally, he at times cannot get a more seasoned veteran out of the fight when he has him in trouble. Wobbly on his legs. Once again, that left hand behind the head of Tommy Morrison. He has been cautioned twice by referee Mills Lane. Morrison looks to be loading up with the big punches to take Williams out. In the meantime, Williams is scoring with some jabs of his own. There's a left uppercut that scores but does no damage to Carl Williams. We're down to the last few seconds in the third round of the scheduled 10-round heavyweight bout here at Reno Sparks Convention Center between Tommy the Duke Morrison and Carl the Truth Williams. And if the truth be known, Williams comes back after Tommy Morrison throws an ineffective overhand right that misses and scores with his left jab once again. There's a straight left jab of Morrison's that glances off the head of Carl Williams as they go into a clinch. And we're reaching the end of round number 4 here in Reno, Nevada. This is the co-feature of a dual heavyweight card this evening. It's Tommy Morrison in the black with red, white, and another tradition that has plagued Tommy Morrison against more seasoned and more deadly opponents is his capacity to tire. And a right cross from Carl Williams to the head of Tommy Morrison sends Morrison to the canvas. And Williams connects with a right uppercut as Tommy Morrison goes down for a second time. He tried to tackle Williams. It seemed about the only thing he could do. Williams, with all that experience, now closes in on the younger Morrison and continues to hammer Morrison behind the head with his right hands. We're in Nevada, and the 3 knockdown rule is in effect. Morrison has already been on the canvas twice. If Williams can deliver one more punch and send Morrison to the canvas, that will be it. And we're down to 10 seconds here in Reno, Nevada, as Tommy Morrison battles back, delivering a right hand and a left hook to the jaw of Carl Williams. As Williams holds, the round comes to an end. Referee Mills Lane warns Williams once again about putting his hand behind the head of Morrison. Morrison's camp has got to be in disarray at this juncture. Williams comes out flicking that left jab, trying to set Tommy Morrison off as Morrison stalks and connects to the head of Carl Williams. Williams coming very close in round number 5 to a devastating upset of Tommy Morrison as he sent him twice to the canvas and he could not set him down a third time. Under Nevada rules, 3 knockdown rule is in effect. Tommy Morrison scoring heavily now with rights and lefts to the head of Carl Williams, and the crowd definitely in Tommy Morrison's corner. continues to cheer the young heavyweight. With the first shot to the head, Carl Williams shook his head, saying it didn't mean anything. Tommy Morrison countered with another right shot to conditioning against a seasoned veteran. Morrison coming with that stinging left hook to the head of Williams. That's a curse and a blessing. If he can land the big punch, out goes Williams. If he can't, Williams can score jabs, and he scores now. Save himself and let Williams punch himself out. Then those big left hooks and right crosses, and Morrison comes out with that left hook, and there's a right uppercut. There's a left hook that sends Williams back against the rope, and he is dazed. But can Morrison put him away? That has always been a big question. Williams wades back in again, throwing lefts and rights to a Williams who covers up. And referee Mills Lane looks at Carl Williams and says that's it. Predicated, presumably, on the fact that Williams was not throwing any punches in retaliation.
The win earned Morrison his biggest opportunity yet, a shot at the vacant WBO heavyweight title against George Foreman. Morrison was 24, Foreman 44, 20 years apart in age, but separated by even more in myth. Foreman was the comeback king, a legend reforged in middle age, chasing a title that once seemed lost to time. For Morrison, it was the kind of fight that could vault him from prominence to permanence. But to get there, he'd have to leave more than punches behind. He'd have to outrun himself. Trainer Tommy Vergetz made sure of it. Knowing Morrison's nightlife habits could sabotage the biggest moment of his career, Vergetz shipped him off to the Virginia Military Institute, far from the women, distractions, and bad decisions that trailed him like an entourage. He trained for 2 hours a day, co-manager Bill Caton said, but he partied the other 22. Not this time. VMI was disciplined by design, just what Morrison needed. Ironically, years earlier, after Morrison's brutal loss to Ray Mercer, Foreman himself had offered the young fighter some advice. Build your endurance. Run for over an hour a day. At the time, it was a gesture of kindness from a veteran to a kid still learning how to breathe in the deep waters of the heavyweight division. Foreman had no idea those words would come back as strategy, because when Morrison stepped into the ring with Big George, he wasn't looking to trade bombs. He was looking to last, to box, to prove, maybe for the first time, that he could fight smart. On fight night, the student used the master's own wisdom against him. Morrison went to the belly early, then cracked Foreman upstairs. Foreman kept coming, like a fridge on legs. Next few rounds, same story. Morrison picked his shots. Foreman lumbered like a tractor that hadn't seen oil in years. Morrison popped him, backed off, circled, threw a few, stayed out of trouble. By the 11th, the crowd had enough of the hit and run. They wanted blood. Morrison gave them footwork instead, kept his head, stayed clean, scored points. Not pretty, but it worked. The reviews were mixed. Foreman was leading the attack, Gil Clancy said, but it's like a cat and a dog. The dog chases the cat, and then the cat scratches the heck out of him. That's what Morrison has been doing. Michael Moore's trainer, Teddy Atlas, was unimpressed. I thought it was a horrendous fight plan, Atlas said. I shouldn't use the word plan. I don't think it was a plan. I think it was spontaneous. The only reason it turned out okay was because of what George did not do, not because of what Tommy executed. Morrison's first title defense was supposed to be a made-for-Hollywood moment. An art imitates life clash with Mike Williams, the man who played his on-screen rival in Rocky V. But real life, as always, had its own script. Williams pulled out, and Morrison was left to dispatch journeyman Tim Tomaszek in a stay-busy fight that did little to raise his stock. Almost immediately, the conversation shifted to something bigger, a showdown with WBC heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis. The two sides agreed, and a deal was struck, $7.5 million for Morrison, with the fight scheduled for March of 1994. It was a career-defining opportunity, the kind of payday that legitimizes a legacy. But instead of heading straight for Lewis, Morrison opted for a tune-up, a routine fight to stay sharp. The opponent, Michael Bent, a relative unknown with a 10-1 record and a handful of amateur credentials. On paper, it looked like a formality. In practice, it turned out to be a disaster. Even before the first bell, the signs were there. According to Morrison's uncle, Troy, the heavyweight champion had been drinking beer the night before the fight at a country and western concert. "You just can't do that fighting at a world level," Troy said. "You can bluff the cameras. You can't bluff the ring."
Tommy Morrison, if he wins this fight, will go on to a big payday with Lennox Lewis, and that one hurt. Michael Bent in trouble already, but trying to fight out of there. And a left connected, and Bent in trouble again. And Tommy Morrison trying to end it early. And a good right by Bent, and Tommy Morrison is down at 2:05 of the first round. So Morrison connected and hurt Bent. Bent came back with a right hand and floors Morrison. Now Morrison has been down before in fights that he has won, and now Tommy Morrison gets hit with a left, and he knocks Morrison down again. Tommy Morrison in deep trouble here in the first round, and a lot of time remaining in round number one. You can see the bewilderment in the eyes of Tommy Morrison as Michael Bent from New York City looking to finish him off. And Bent just throwing nothing but haymakers right now, and Morrison in deep trouble. And Morrison is down, and the fight is over.
The loss to Bent was more than an upset. It was a derailment. Morrison had gone from headlining a title defense to watching his career veer off the tracks in a matter of minutes. "I let my ego get in the way," Morrison said. "I looked at tape of Michael Bent and saw a guy who couldn't beat me with a ball bat. Then he did." In the aftermath, the blame game began. Morrison pointed fingers at his longtime manager, John Brown, and their already fragile partnership shattered. Morrison left Kansas City and returned to Oklahoma. Brown sued. The legal fight dragged on for years before it was finally settled in 1997. "My relationship with John Brown was never too stable," Morrison said. "I wasn't pleased with the way he handled things. He's the hero of every story he's ever told. Everyone who works for him hates his guts." Brown, for his part, never quite understood how Morrison, talented, marketable, explosive, could sabotage his own momentum so consistently. "Tommy would much rather tell a lie even when the truth worked," Brown said. "It's all part of the enigma of Tommy Morrison." And the drama wasn't confined to contracts and corner disputes. In December of 1993, Morrison was arrested in Iowa for striking a university student. His blood alcohol content, police reported, was twice the legal limit. The headlines were no longer about knockouts. They were about courtroom appearances and missed opportunities. Instead of making $7.5 million in a mega fight with Lennox Lewis, Morrison found himself making $60,000 purses, facing former sparring partners like Tui Tuoa and Brian Scott. He strung together a modest 3-fight win streak, just enough to put his name back in contention. When Michael Moorer upset Evander Holyfield to claim the heavyweight crown, Morrison's name was floated for a title shot. It came down to two men, Morrison and George Foreman. Foreman got the nod and changed history with a thunderous knockout of Moorer that made him the oldest heavyweight champion in history. Morrison, meanwhile, struggled to get up for lesser-known opponents like Sherman Griffin and Ross Purity. He was even dropped by Purity, a reminder that when a fighter's fire goes dim, so does his balance. A scheduled bout with Herbie Hyde in Hong Kong collapsed due to poor funding and fan interest. Morrison, once positioned as a torchbearer for American heavyweights, was now wandering the margins. Still, he kept chasing the next shot. The next came in the form of Razor Ruddock, a former #1 contender with a wrecking ball left hand and a career equally defined by chaos. It was a crossroads fight, not just for Morrison, but for two punchers clinging to relevance by their gloves.
Watershed or potential watershed in his career. And across the way, Razor Ruddock, the man who gave Mike Tyson 2 difficult bouts, had a shot against Lennox Lewis that turned into disaster for him. People will watch even these early rounds quite closely.
Yeah, there should be explosiveness. Sometimes you see fighters with the same power styles become very cautious so they don't open up, but Tommy Morrison, with the exception of the George Foreman fight, has always gotten in there and done major early work.
And remember, the last time Ruddock was in any kind of a major fight several years ago was against Lennox Lewis. Lewis caught him early and whacked him out early. Nice jab by Morrison. And remember,
so many intriguing matchups, Al, because, you know, the old adage, don't left hook with a left hooker, but that's the money punch for both guys.
Both guys have to do it. You're right. I was going to remind people of the nice uppercut by Ruddock. Oh, there goes Morrison! He leaned in and got whacked with an uppercut. Will Morrison box? Is there room to box? No, he's going to go after Razor Ruddock. He's moving now, but they wanted the 16-foot ring, Morrison. Now it may not serve him well if he has to box.
He sure could use a 20-footer right here. He has to get the jab going, and Ruddock will try to put him away here, loading up with everything. Hey, Morrison may have to pound his way out of this, ironically enough.
Ruddock doing a very nice job of blocking that left hook. What Morrison may have learned is that on the inside, Ruddock is much more dangerous, and that uppercut, that was the punch that stunned Mike Tyson on a couple of occasions.
Tremendous shot. You know, you look for the left hook, you worry about the left hook, and something else comes up. And we talked in the open about Ruddock not using his right hand enough. There he did.
Ruddock has not thrown many punches since he knocked Morrison down. In fact, he's thrown very little. There's Morrison with the uppercut.
Ruddock just missed with that one.
Morrison tried the jab, and Ruddock countered with the hook.
Well, based on the early results to this point, Ruddock did not parlay his knockdown. He's really been able to tell when Morrison is about to launch into it.
The hook blocked by Morrison. Ruddock has done a nice defensive job. Good combinations by Morrison, which he is capable of at his best. Dave, it's interesting. People think Morrison's not a schooled fighter. He is when he uses all his tools.
And sometimes the adrenaline of the crowd and his own intention to win the fight early can get him away from those styles. He boxed a masterpiece against George Foreman.
The jab sparingly. Razor Ruddock is not a guy that throws a lot of punches. There's the uppercut landing, but this time Morrison absorbs the punch.
But he still paid for it.
Oh, he hurt Ruddock with a right uppercut. Razor Ruddock got rocked by the same punch that knocked Morrison down. Lifted, give him a standing 8 count. That's bizarre.
Because of the gloves on the top of the rope being used as a support.
I guess. It just seemed like Morrison had a big advantage there that they took away from him. Tommy Morrison hurts Ruddock, but that counts as a knockdown would. And the IBC has a standing 8 count in effect.
Ironically, the knockdown gets called after the major damage had been done because of the timing.
And eliminates the possibility of Morrison knocking him out. It's the only reason why I was critical there of Ron Lipton, who, by the way, is a very, very good referee. So in round 2, it's Morrison's turn to hurt Ruddock. Beautiful combination by Tommy Morrison. The hand speed. Oh, big hook by Ruddock, and he lands an uppercut. Now remember against Ray Mercer, Morrison threw those beautiful combinations, landed the same kind of shots. Mercer just wouldn't go down.
And Mercer has that Titanic chin.
We're into round 3. Tommy Morrison and Razor Ruddock. Morrison was down in round 1. Ruddock was down in round 2. Who will go down in round 3?
Tried to tie him up and didn't quite complete the job.
Now, normally this would be too early to say it. Even though we're only in the 3rd round, I now say, folks, who's going to get tired? Because both men are showing some signs of it here. Good left hook at the end of that round by Razor Ruddock.
Had Tommy Morrison right in front of him and did not fire the uppercut. Now he gets it in.
Morrison not punching on the inside. Ruddock is. Now Morrison's punches look like he's tired. Right now, Morrison's not throwing with the same effectiveness.
And normally, you see a fighter go inside to try and buy some time. But in this particular fight, that's a bad strategy for Tommy Morrison.
And I'll tell you, if he gets tired against Ruddock, as he did against Anderson, he'll get knocked out, period.
Yes.
End of sentence, end of paragraph.
And
And he looks tired right now, Dave. Ruddock looks like he's leaning on Morrison a little bit to try and tire him out more. And the ring is still enough to keep Ruddock at bay. Shows you how slow Ruddock is moving.
Ruddock cutting off the ring, sets up the right hand. Morrison has the movement in his arsenal. Ruddock really doesn't. Morrison should use it.
Good uppercut, but Morrison comes back with the hook. He's got Ruddock hurt. He hurt him with the left hook. Razor Ruddock is hurt now. Good body combinations by Morrison. But Ruddock is talking to him. Ruddock has begun to throw some pretty potent body punches, though, in the last round or two. Now he is forcing Morrison back. That uppercut may have stunned Morrison.
Tommy Morrison got hurt by the right hand. He couldn't bring his jab back.
Ruddock is going after him. We talked about the stamina of both men. Morrison has had trouble as he's gone into later rounds.
Hey, we've seen it recently with Holyfield, Mercer, and now here, where you can have fun in a heavyweight fight.
You can indeed, and this one has proved to be quite interesting. It ain't over yet. Good right hand. Ruddock's throwing more right hands than we are accustomed to seeing him throw. And the combination punching of Morrison is not there as it was earlier.
Ruddock really taking advantage of the left hook scouting report that was his. Also, he's getting closer here easily. Ruddock doesn't even have to jab his way in here. He's getting close to Tommy Morrison.
Morrison dabbing his eye. I don't know if he's cut over his left eye. It doesn't look like it. There's the Morrison attack to the body and then the uppercut to the head. When he uses it, he's effective.
That they will get the decision or that the fight will go all the way.
But Ruddock landing some big shots here in this round.
Just missed with that uppercut. His hooks have been very good.
Morrison has forgotten what works for him. That is go to the body and then throw combination. He's unable to do that. Big hook by Ruddock, but Morrison is still there.
And the point is, he shouldn't be. He should be on his bicycle right now.
Big round for Razor Ruddock. Morrison with a hook at the bell and Ruddock with a hook at the bell.
He had there that he didn't take advantage of.
We head into round 6. It is scheduled for 12. Tommy Morrison down in the first round. Razor Ruddock a standing 8 count in the second. And since then, it has been an interesting exchange of power punches with Ruddock dominating the 5th round. And we think maybe going after a tiring Tommy Morrison.
Ruddock goes to the body here. Good hook. And one indication of Tommy Morrison being tired is that after Ruddock misses the left hook, Morrison cannot immediately come back.
Ruddock has fought once in the last 15 months against Anthony Wade. He won in a lackluster decision. There's a hook by Ruddock, and it may have hurt Morrison. Big left hook! Down goes Razor Ruddock! From nowhere came the hook that we have not seen for rounds. Can Morrison put him down again?
What a terrific shot.
Morrison
candidate.
Morrison hitting on the break, and both men have been guilty of that. How about Ruddock getting up? What does Morrison have left?
A standing 8 here.
Now, this a standing 8.
The knockdown.
That counts the knockdown. The 3 knockdown rule is in effect.
And we've had a knockdown plus a standing 8. That's a lot of time for Ruddock to kill here. And Ron Lipton told us before the fight he would like to see the standing 8 not in effect here. The 3 knockdown rule not in effect because of flash knockdowns. He may be forced to stop this, yet both fighters look like they can keep going.
Remember, Razor Ruddock was the part of the most controversial stoppage of the year when the fight was stopped against Mike Tyson by referee Richard Steele. Morrison is nailing him though, but Ruddock is still holding on.
He needs to buy about 10 more seconds, and it's a long one. He will not do it.
Oh my, it's over. Toward the end of the round, Ron Lipton says, I have seen enough. Tommy Morrison comes back with a TKO here in the 6th round.
Take a good look at Razor Ruddock if we can focus on him. That's not the look of a fighter who should not be fighting anymore in this bout. But the 3 knockdown rule comes up to bite him.
They celebrate here in Kansas City. Tommy Morrison, hurt, knocked down in the 1st round, comes back to win on a TKO here in the 6th round.
2 years and a few wrong turns later, Morrison finally got the fight he'd once been promised. Originally slated to face Riddick Bowe, the matchup fell through when Bowe secured a 3rd bout with Evander Holyfield, leaving Morrison once again on the outside looking in. But boxing, as it often does, spun another opportunity his way. A deal was reached with Lennox Lewis, though it came at a discount. Instead of the $7.5 million Morrison was once guaranteed, the payday was a fraction of that. The stakes were still high, so were the odds. Morrison entered the ring as a 3-1 underdog, and by the end of 6 rounds, the odds looked generous. Lewis took over early. Jab, right hand, all business. Morrison got him on the ropes in the 2nd, landed 2 clean ones. The crowd leaned in. Lewis leaned out and dropped him with a left. Not a bomb, more of a slip, but Morrison came up bleeding, right eye already telling the story. 4th round, Lewis opened the other side, cut him on the cheek. Morrison came back with a left, a combo, some noise. Looked like a fight again. Then Lewis shut it down with a left-right that made Tommy blink. Round 5, Morrison's right eye was a slit. He still let the left hook go. Caught Lewis on the chin. Best shot of the night. Lewis didn't even blink. He answered with an uppercut that folded Morrison to one knee. Tommy beat the count, but you could see it. He was losing daylight. Round 6 was a mercy. Lewis sent him down with a jab. Morrison got up, brave, but finished. Lewis ended it with a short hook that landed like a door slamming shut. And that was it. Another opportunity come and gone. A once promising career left to reckon with its broken promises and the brutal precision of one of the era's most complete heavyweights. Tommy Morrison will be back, Morrison said after. I was a one-eyed fighter tonight. 4 months after standing toe-to-toe with Lennox Lewis, Morrison's boxing career collapsed. Not from a punch, but from a test result. Just hours before a scheduled bout with Arthur Weathers, Morrison tested positive for HIV. The diagnosis shocked the boxing world and blindsided Morrison himself. He claimed he had no idea how or from whom the virus had been transmitted. His last clean test had come in June of 1993, but he acknowledged a promiscuous lifestyle. Morrison addressed the press in a public statement, then made the rounds on national television, including a high-profile appearance on Larry King Live. In the year that followed, Morrison's phone didn't stop ringing. Calls from promoters, interviewers, fans, and opportunists. But as the public interest swelled, Morrison's direction withered. He didn't know what to do in his career or with his health. He eventually stopped taking his HIV medication, citing the side effects. Banned from fighting in the United States, Morrison took a bout in Japan, where his HIV status didn't disqualify him. He revealed he had married 2 women simultaneously, both coincidentally named Dawn. In December of 1997, he was arrested again, this time for driving under the influence and carrying a firearm. A month later, his ranch-style home burned to the ground. A fire department never found a definitive cause. I know what happened, Morrison said. They didn't want me in that town. But the fire was just another line on a list of problems. There were more DUIs, one in February of 1998 and another in July. In August of 1999, a judge ordered him to a state hospital for psychiatric evaluation. Then came Thanksgiving. Morrison was arrested once again for fleeing into the woods when the Corvette he was riding in veered off the road and crashed into trees. He was found 3 hours later, disoriented and trying to use a payphone. Police arrested him for weapons possession and public intoxication. Morrison claimed he had loaned the car to a friend who was using it to deal drugs. The court didn't buy the story. Morrison was sentenced to 2 years in prison. The press kept showing up. Tommy welcomed them. He lit up when the cameras rolled, leaning into his legend, even as the reality around him frayed. He bragged about his past the way fighters do when the present no longer cooperates, laying claim to Wilt Chamberlain-level numbers. Sex became part of my conditioning program, Morrison said. 3 different women a day for 7 or 8 years. But even as he flaunted his excesses, Morrison insisted sex wasn't the reason he contracted HIV. He pointed instead to steroid injections. Doctors dismissed the theory outright. They said he was in denial, lost in self-made myths. By now, Morrison's life was a tangle of loose ends. He was estranged from his father. His older brother, Tim, was serving time in Missouri for rape. Whatever structure had once held Morrison's world together had collapsed. I moved back home and started hanging out with my old friends, Morrison said. They were up to no good, doing drugs and stuff. I never messed with any of that stuff until I retired. In 2001, he was released from prison and remarried one of his ex-wives. He lived on a monthly disability check. By 2006, he looked thinner, worn, his face hollowed out, his eyes dimmer. He blamed his haggard appearance not on HIV, but on methamphetamine binges, claiming it had helped him focus with his thoughts and made sense of a life slipping through the cracks. He said he had been diagnosed with adult attention deficit disorder. In 2007, he was scheduled to return to the ring, but a hand injury delayed it. He eventually fought on Versus TV, though the fight never aired. The plan, quietly, was to let him work his way back off camera, see if the spark was still there. There were signs of insecurity. He got pectoral implants, hoping to appear more powerful, more like the fighter he once was. He ventured into mixed martial arts, calling it a favor to a friend. He won. Then came one final boxing match, a knockout of 25-year-old novice Matt Weishar, who'd only been boxing for a year. But outside the ring, Morrison was adrift. He tried his hand at TV commentary. He launched the Tommy Morrison Children's Foundation, a camp for terminally ill kids in Wichita. It didn't stick. His pec implants became infected and had to be removed in 2011. According to his mother, Morrison had by then developed full-blown AIDS. He had been bedridden for over a year. On September 1st, 2013, Tommy Morrison died at the Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha. He was 44. The official cause? Cardiac arrest brought on by multi-organ failure due to septic shock. There was no final bell, no dramatic rise at the count of 9. The fighter who once seemed destined to be boxing's next American star, a man who had shared the screen with Stallone and held a piece of the heavyweight crown, died in a hospital bed far from the lights, far from the cheers. The left hook, the Hollywood smile, the roar of the crowd, all just echoes now. A story half told, swallowed by time.